What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 14, Monday Night Football.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
Okay guys, in this video, I'm going to give you my top DFS picks for this Monday Night Football showdown between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, Monday Night Football, let's take a look at the quarterback position. So I like both quarterbacks here. Let's start with Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens playing the Cleveland Browns, who have the 11th worst defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson has averaged 21.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 10.6 rush attempts per game. He scored 27 fantasy points last game off of 13 rush attempts. He's projected at 21.2 fantasy points here tonight, and he's 11,800 DraftKings salary. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, and they have the Baltimore Ravens favored by 3.5. So great matchup here for Lamar Jackson. He could have a ton of rushing yards in this one, so I like Lamar Jackson here versus the Cleveland Browns. Now on the other side of the ball, I also like Baker Mayfield from the Cleveland Browns, averaging 15.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3 rush attempts per game. He exploded last week for 34 fantasy points. Now he's only projected at 15.5 fantasy points here tonight, but he is only 10,000 DraftKings salary. And we know Vegas thinks that the Browns are going to be trailing in this game, so it should be a passing game script. We saw the upside from Baker Mayfield last week. I think he's worth a shot here tonight to see if he can continue that momentum from last week. So I like Baker Mayfield here versus the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. My favorite running back on the slate, when you consider salary and ownership, is Kareem Hunt from the Cleveland Browns playing the Baltimore Ravens. Kareem Hunt has averaged 14 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 14.3 rush attempts per game and 2.9 pass targets per game. He got 14 rush attempts and 3 pass targets last game. Now, he only scored 9 fantasy points. He hasn't been super productive the past few games, so that lowered his price, lowered his ownership, but Kareem Hunt has some pretty big upside. But most games that Kareem Hunt has played with Nick Chubb, he's put up double-digit fantasy points, and he's projected at 11.7 fantasy points here tonight, and he's only 7,200 DraftKings salary. So I like Kareem Hunt here versus the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I also like Nick Chubb, but he's 10,200 DraftKings salary. He is averaging 18.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 16.6 rush attempts per game and 1 pass target per game. And he's been fantastic since coming back from injury. He scored 18, 30, and 14 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 15 fantasy points here tonight. So I also like Nick Chubb. I wouldn't play both of these guys in the same lineup, but I also like Nick Chubb here versus the Baltimore Ravens. So I think I'm going to pass on the Ravens running backs. You got J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Mark Ingram. I think they're all going to get some rush attempts here tonight. It's going to be tough to figure out which guy's going to get into the end zone. So I'm going to avoid the Baltimore running backs altogether in this one. So let's move on to the wide receivers.
Real quick guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
At the wide receiver position, I like Jarvis Landry from the Cleveland Browns playing the Baltimore Ravens. He's averaging 12 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.5 pass targets per game. But take a look at the last 2 games. He scored 20 and 31 fantasy points off of 10 and 11 pass targets. He's projected at 14.1 fantasy points here tonight, and he's $9,400 DraftKings salary. So with the Cleveland Browns expected to be trailing the Baltimore Ravens, this should be a passing game script. Baker Mayfield's been on fire, so I like Jarvis Landry here versus the Baltimore Ravens. Another wide receiver I like is Marquis Brown from the Baltimore Ravens. He's averaging 10.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.3 pass targets per game. Take a look at his last 2 games. He scored 15 and 19 fantasy points off of 8 pass targets in each of those games. He's projected at 10.9 fantasy points here tonight, and he's $7,400 DraftKings salary. So nice matchup for Marquis Brown because the Cleveland Browns give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So I like Marquis Brown here versus the Cleveland Browns. And if you're looking to save a little salary here at the wide receiver position, take a look at Rashard Higgins from the Cleveland Browns, averaging 8.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3.4 pass targets per game, but he scored 22 fantasy points last game off of 9 pass targets. He's projected at 9.3 fantasy points here tonight, and he's $6,200 DraftKings salary. So I like Rashard Higgins here versus the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. I like Mark Andrews from the Baltimore Ravens. He's averaging 11.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6 pass targets per game. He's projected at 12.1 fantasy points here tonight, and he's $8,800 DraftKings salary. He's probably got the most upside on the slate. He could make a great captain here tonight, and he's got a great matchup. The Cleveland Browns give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, so I like Mark Andrews here versus the Cleveland Browns.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again and good luck.